Marvelous hello, friends and loved ones! How are you today? So, a while back, I did a video on the very first Megami Tensei game I ever owned, DemiKids Light version. And I said that if there was enough interest, I'd do a video on DemiKids Dark version. Well, there was enough interest. So I'm doing a video on DemiKids Dark version. You'd think after nearly 5 years of this, I'd be better with these intros, but... Want to see my Yusuke Funko Pop? Okay, so before we get started, you should probably go watch my video on DemiKids Light version if you haven't seen it yet. To quickly summarize just what DemiKids is, in 1987, Atlus made Megami Tensei. In 1996, Game Freak made Pokemon, and in 2000, Atlus was like, hey, what if we made Megami Tensei into a Pokemon? Western audiences never got the Gen 1 of DemiKids, known in Japan as Devil Children, but we did get the first half of Gen 2, which contained light and dark versions. The main thing that made these games different from Pokemon was that the games didn't just reuse the same locations and have a handful of version-exclusive demons. I mean, they did do both of those things, but each game focused on a different protagonist with a different demon guide, going through those locations in a different order, and together their individual tales each make up one half of a complete story. As I'm sitting down to write the first draft of the script, I already feel like it's gonna be a bit shorter than my light version video, because most of the stuff I talked about in that video can be applied to this one as well. So, while light version opened up with Amy fleeing from Valhalla to our world to escape the tyrant known as Imperius, dark version opens up in Dem, with Lucifer talking to his advisor about the time rifts that have started popping up, and instructs Forlo to go find the children mentioned in the prophecy that will save their world. From there, it's about the same as light version. Amy becomes a student at the protagonist's school, Lena tells them about a book she found that can summon a demon, they summon Gargoyle, he attacks them, Amy gives the boys a toy line that never seemed to catch on, and our protagonist, this time a blue-haired emo boy named Akira, summons his demon partner, a Rox named Gale. Where the plot separates is that when Jin, Lena, and Amy head up to the roof to go to Valhalla, Akira gets delayed by what may be the least threatening henchman ever. So, by the time he gets up to the roof, the portal to Valhalla has already closed. Luckily, this super obviously not evil guy comes out of a second portal and is like, hey, you wanna come with me to meet Lucifer? And Akira's just like, yeah, okay. But before you can meet Lucifer, you've gotta go to the woods, ring a bell, fight a forest guardian, so he'll give you a pinwheel, which... Okay, let me address the elephant in the room with Dark version. Dark version story is supposed to be more focused on demons than light version, which makes perfect sense. But because of that, the game never really feels like it has that much of an overarching narrative. Jin's story involved him meeting the Resistance, then joining the Resistance, then learning there's a traitor, then figuring out who the traitor is, then defeating the traitor. You know, there's a fairly consistent arc to it. Dark version doesn't really have anything like that. Sure, you meet Lucifer and he helps you figure out how to destroy time rifts, but that's something Jin is also doing alongside his main quest. Something I genuinely like about the DemiKids games is their sense of sharing a connected story. For example, there was a moment in light version when Lena tells Jin about how she ran into Akira while she was in Dem, and sure enough, in dark version we do see that exact scene. But a surprisingly high amount of moments in dark version seem to involve Akira showing up to where Resistance members are, only to have them be like, oh man, you totally just missed this awesome thing that Jin did. And the Resistance never really makes Akira feel welcome either. Usually their reaction to seeing him is just like, oh, you're that guy we were told about. Whatever. Akira never even meets Drail, by the way. Remember Drail, the leader of the Resistance? Kind of an important character? Well, not in dark version. I get that Akira's story isn't supposed to be as connected to that plot, but I don't feel like it did a good job of giving us other characters to make up for that. Forlo first appears to Akira as an ally, but if you recall from light version, he's a dirty, rotten usurper who wants to take over Dem, but that never even gets addressed in dark version. Forlo disappears pretty early in the plot, and we never even see him again because Jin killed him for us in light version. Even the Time Maidens behind Lucifer's palace do way less in this game. Rather than sending you on a test through time, their role in dark version is just to give you a few of those time chains to fix the rifts. The story that's supposed to focus on demon characters made 3 of the most potentially interesting ones into essentially that one nameless dude who gave Jin the time chains in prison. You do fight Gravir, who is basically Forlo's own personal Jafar, which I guess makes her like the Iago here, but she just wants to test your strength, and then we never see her again anyway. Akira's story feels much more like a series of side quests involving demons that are only loosely connected by the main plot, which at the end of the day is to acquire the power of Dark and defeat Imperius. And pretty much your only reminder of this is that some of the places you go have boss demons that are like, Mruhaha, Imperius shall rule all! One of the best story bits in the entire game is when Akira meets up with this loserish Jack Frost named Zack Frost, who dreams of becoming a Frost Ace one day. So you help him defeat a powerful demon so he can pass his certification exam. It's a cute story. But this one actually is a side quest that's completely optional, and yet it feels about as close to the main plot as some of the things you have to do. There's also this one bit where Akira winds up in his world in the future where it's become a ravaged apocalyptic wasteland, but thankfully someone is like, oh, woe is me, if only someone had planted a tree in this exact spot in the past, maybe none of this would have ever happened. Wink. Yeah, okay, I get it. So you reach out to Kibra, the forest guardian, and get her help planting a tree in the present. Then go back to the future, and apparently the world still got completely and utterly destroyed at some point, but, you know, at least now they have trees. And your reward for doing all this is Kibra telling you to go tell Lucifer what a good boy you are so he'll trust you with the task of inheriting the power of Dark. Which confused me because I thought we'd more than already done that when we first met Kibra, or when we first met Lucifer, or when the Time Maidens trusted us with the time chains to destroy the rifts, but no. Apparently this is what convinced them we're the right kid. Mucking up the space-time continuum. I also want to get one quick nitpick out of the way. Remember how in Light version, Amy just sorta died off screen and it was just kinda offhandedly mentioned? Well, in Dark version, Amy just sorta dies off screen, and that's just kinda offhandedly mentioned. I thought the entire point of this game was to show us the stuff we missed out on in the other game, but apparently Amy is just not worth focusing on in either version, which is a shame because I actually like Amy. At a certain point, the plot of Dark version becomes virtually identical to Light version, but with the names and locations tweaked. Akira witnesses a conversation in the past between Lucifer and Dark Lord, one of the two DemiKids that created Valhalla, which is really hilarious to me because it's basically the exact same conversation he had with Lord Light in Light version. Is this moment in time when the two lords were having a fight, but Lucifer didn't want to take sides, so, you know, he made sure to take the time to hang out at both of their houses? Akira brings the letter back to Lucifer. Lucifer is like, okay, you are the right kid, I'm glad we confirmed that for the third time, but just to confirm it one more time and actually get you those dark powers, go to Dark Lord's temple to the east and acquire the Testament. You even fight that exact same soy sauce bottle looking dude that you fought in Light version, which kinda surprised me because up until now, this game had been really good about not reusing the boss demons. Akira heads to Elysium, and okay, I do want to geek out about this one small detail that I loved. So in Light version, Jin arrives at Elysium, and then Akira comes in shortly after. But in Dark version, when Akira arrives, Jin is already there. It's a small touch, but one that I did really appreciate. Though, I also found out that the guide the non-playable protagonist winds up with is apparently based on whatever choices you made for yours, which kinda undoes all those light-based choices I made in Light version, if Jin was just gonna wind up with a dark cat anyways. I picked all the dark-based answers for Gale and Dark version, so I wound up with this Blazron thing that I'm not even positive where the face is. This part kinda looks like a face. I think he's got, like, shoulder faces? From there, you head to Imperius' palace, and this time, instead of fighting the dark side of Imperius, Empio, you fight his light side, Emperor. And then you fight the giant time-eating monster that is basically the same as the one from Light version, except he has a different name and looks slightly different. All the worlds are saved until the sequels, we never got mess things up again. Dark Lord and Lord Light show up slightly asymmetrically and it drives me nuts. They revive Lena and Amy and allow us to choose between more adventure, which unlocks a bonus dungeon, New Game Plus, or returning to our last save. Like in Light version, I elected for the bonus dungeon so I could collect a few more powerful demons for my team, including Lucifer himself. And that's Dark version. It's basically the other half of Light version, but I do think the story is a bit weaker on this side. Dark version does boast a couple of differences in its gameplay, such as ranked fusion, where you can fuse two of the same demon together to make them a bit stronger, and certain demons, if fused enough, will actually evolve into a completely different demon, which is kinda cool. The biggest difference Dark version has, though, is it's considered the more hardcore of the two, and could be seen as hard mode. But not hard in the sense of better enemy AI or more challenging puzzles, more just in the sense that the battles reward far less Maka, and it costs more Maka to revive fallen allies. Which I guess isn't a terrible incentive to try harder to keep your demons alive, but to me it just meant more grinding was involved, which is made slightly worse, because I think Dark version also made it so your attacks do way less damage to enemies, making grinding an even lengthier experience. Dark version also has its own share of side quest demons that can be recruited, though I'll confess I'm not as familiar with all of them, so I probably missed a bunch. And those secret password demons that you all learned about thanks to that magazine I wasted $12 on are also back, albeit in new locations this time around. I know it sounds like I was way tougher on Dark version than Light version, and that's just because I do think it's the weaker of the two games. This was already a series with pretty minimal plot structure and character growth, but somehow this one seemed like it had even less. I'd have loved if more of these demons felt like proper characters that drove the plot, but they just kind of fell a little short. I do still totally recommend the game, especially if you're looking to get the whole DemiKids experience, but if you had to pick only one of the two, which, given the eBay prices on these games now, I wouldn't blame you, I think you'd be better off with Light version. But before we go, there's one thing you should all know that Dark version has that Light version doesn't. Baby Jack Frost. Look how adorable this thing is! It's like if Baby Yoda and Baby Sonic had a baby and that baby killed and ate Baby Mr. Peanut.